What's going on, bottom line viewers? It is time for the 2022 NFL season. You know what that means. It is time for my official 2022 NFL predictions. In this video, the AFC record predictions. We are going to preview all 16 AFC teams. We're going to go over their offense, their defense, their record prediction, how I see their outlook for the 2022 NFL season, along with some surprises from their roster, some disappointments, my player evaluations for every team, every starter, and more. It's a breakdown, comprehensive breakdown, that is, of your NFL team entering 2022. I'm gonna try to make it crisp and efficient and not go too long on any individual team, but I tend to do that. So join me here live as we have some fun previewing the AFC. If you guys are wondering, where's the NFC at? Well, that will be tomorrow. We will discuss and we will preview and we will predict the records for the NFC tomorrow, and then I'll come out with my complete predictions and a rundown of every team, every division, the playoffs, and more coming up before we get to the start of the 2022 NFL season. Before we get started discussing every team in the NFL, I just want to hear what's up from you guys and what's going on with you guys. So let me know what's going on and we'll get started. So we got Caesar, we got Samuel, we've got Sing in the chat. What's going on, guys? Tessa's in the chat. Thank you, guys. So just a reminder before we get started to Gronk spike that like button. It definitely helps the algorithm. Also, if you are new to the channel, subscribe for NFL content all season long, including best bets throughout the season, including weekly picks, including weekly reviews where I go nuts on the NFL and I rant and rave about the latest NFL news and topics and games, and a lot more on the channel. So make sure to check that stuff out, guys. But we are here for the AFC predictions. Let's get it started. Let's waste no more time. Just in terms of shoutouts, if you guys aren't already following the BLV TikTok, I highly suggest to go follow. The link is in the description if you guys want to check it out, or if you just have TikTok, the app, search up TheBottomLineView, you will find me, and I've been making plenty of content on there as well. So if you guys haven't seen any of that stuff, definitely go check that out. So go give me a follow on TikTok. All right, let's get started with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and don't forget to let me know your record prediction for your favorite team or for every team as we go along here and we go with every single team. Give me the record prediction for that team. I'm going to do it in a little bit different order as I just suggested. We're going to start with the Steelers, which is the AFC North. So we're going to go AFC North. Instead of starting with the AFC East, we're actually going to go North, South, East, West here today live. Let's get started with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Pittsburgh Steelers are the first team. Let's discuss it. Overall, I see the Pittsburgh Steelers as a competitive team this year, but I do not see them as an upper echelon AFC team, and I do believe that they will miss the playoffs this year. They did make the playoffs last year by some sort of miracle, but I do view them as a competitive team week in and week out due to a strong defense and an offensive football team that has plenty of skill talent, but does not really have, a great offensive line or a great quarterback. They have a huge question mark at quarterback. And a lot of Steelers fans are coming into the season expecting some sort of upgrade at quarterback because Ben Roethlisberger was, so terrible in their eyes. But in my opinion, there's a couple ways to look at this. So we've got the Pittsburgh Steelers as a team with Ben Roethlisberger, who was very pass heavy, right? High pass rate, got the ball out quick, protected a bad offensive line, could read at the line of scrimmage and get the ball to his playmakers like Deontay Johnson. Some people may say that hurt the Steelers, but it also helped the Steelers because, one, it made them more pass heavy. That just generally helps an offense. It makes you less slow, more fast paced, and be able to, be more efficient offensively if you're a pass-heavy team. They were the second most pass-heavy team in the NFL last year, only behind the Bucs. So that certainly helped them. Second, you got the ball in the hands of guys like Diontae Johnson who are good after the catch. Maybe it hurt like somebody like Chase Claypool. Maybe George Pickens. These guys will be better with Trubisky or Kenny Pickett. Guys that maybe can throw the ball down the field a little bit more, but it might hurt the production of Najee Harris or Diontae Johnson, who really thrived in the short and intermediate areas of the field. Not saying that Diontae can't go deep. He can, but he is better when he's working the underneath areas of the field. Offensively, it also helped a bad offensive line, which did upgrade this offseason, but not a ton, right? When you look at their offense here, the Steelers offensively, you've got Diontae Johnson, George Pickens, and Chase Claypool as the receivers who are starting. You've also got Gunnar Olszewski, who's actually looked kind of good in the preseason, and a couple more options at receiver. They're definitely deep at these positions. You do question them if they do have to lose Najee Harris. Who's going to step up for Najee Harris? He's already dealing with some sort of minor injury for this season, so we'll see if he can stay healthy and stay as that workhorse, like one of the biggest workhorses in the NFL. Trubisky, honestly, man, if I'm being completely honest here, I think, and I'm just going to take this graphic down for a second. If I'm being completely honest, I'm higher on the Steelers now than I was like 3 months ago, and the reason is because of seeing Kenny Pickett in preseason and seeing how effective and efficient he was. He does show flashes of what Mac Jones was last year for New England. You know, a team with plenty of talent around him and a good coach, and a strong defense. Like, if he could just manage the game and make a couple plays, and Pickett has more around him in terms of skill talent. So there is a scenario where I'm a lot more, I see the upside for the Steelers a lot more than I did previously because of Kenny Pickett. I'm not super high on Trubisky. I didn't really love what I saw with Trubisky, and I've always kind of been a Trubisky defender because I just thought he was criticized too heavily in Chicago due to them having a terrible coach. But I do believe that Kenny Pickett is going to come in sooner rather than later because I think, one, he makes less mistakes, boneheaded mistakes than Trubisky, and he offers you more consistency in his throwing and his passing, and I think he can deliver the football, just nice little touch passes to his receivers. So getting back to the offense, where my main point was the offensive line, I just think the offensive line is weak, and that has me concerned, especially at center and the two tackle positions. I don't really trust either one. The guards, I think, are okay. Like, I think James Daniels was a great signing for them. I thought he was very good in Chicago, even despite having bad support around him. I thought that was a good signing. Mason Cole has never been good in the NFL. They need to search for some production on there. Maybe coaching elevates them, but I just don't have much trust in the efficiency of the running game. I don't have much trust in Trubisky to make smart, quick decisions behind a bad offensive line, which leads to more pressure. So I do think the best solution for this team is Kenny Pickett gets in there, he makes quick decisions, he protects the football, and they play through their defense. That is how I view this team if they want to be successful. I think if they're going to stick to a team that was like Ben Roethlisberger and Trubisky's having to be this quick decision maker, it's not going to work out. And I don't think if they're going to lean more on Najee and run the ball, I just don't think that's going to lead to much efficiency either. So I'm concerned about that. Defensively, you've got a defense that's pretty loaded overall, especially when it comes to Minkah Fitzpatrick, TJ Watt, Cameron Hayward. Those guys stand out for sure. I do think Myles Jack, under the tutelage of Brian Flores, could be a very good player this year in their defense. We need to see if Devin Bush can get back to his early form in the NFL, but he was pretty lousy last year, especially as a run defender. The concern I have about this unit is the depth, especially at the edge positions. I'm also not in love with the secondary, but as we've seen with Mike Tomlin defenses in the past, we've seen an ability for Mike Tomlin to elevate defenses and secondaries, and get away with having poor cornerbacks. Sutton's okay. Witherspoon's shown that he can be decent when he's in there as a starter. Levi Wallace, we've seen for a number of seasons be a number 2 to Tre'Davious White. He's okay, nothing special, but nothing like terrible, no legitimate huge weakness or flaw there. I do think that Watt and Hayward will be as dominant as ever, but Hayward is getting a little bit older. I do like the interior defensive line in terms of Alualu, in terms of Ogunjobi, who's not a starter. Highsmith's a solid player. I think their defense is pretty good. I don't think it's like one of the top upper echelon, top 5 defenses, but if they did finish inside the top 10, I don't think that would be very surprising. And like I said, I do think having the collective minds of Brian Flores and Mike Tomlin adding a little bit of, kind of different flair to each other there on that defensive side of the ball, I do think it's going to be very effective for them. And whenever TJ Watt is healthy and on the field with Cam Hayward, you've got a very destructive and powerful defensive line and pass rush. So I view the Pittsburgh Steelers as a football team that will be competitive again, but I don't view them as a playoff team. So my overall record for the Steelers is 8-9. I think that they're going to be solid. I think they have a chance if Kenny Pickett's, pretty good and he comes in early in the season. I think Kenny Pickett can be, lead them to the wild card spot, honestly. I'm that high on what I saw in the preseason if this defense is top-notch. But if it's not top-notch, I just don't see this team with the offensive line and the lack of a running game to be able to get it done. So I've got them at 8-9. I think their ceiling, like I said, is like a wild card 10-7. Mike Tomlin working his magic there. And then floor is like, okay, the offensive line's terrible. Trubisky and or Pickett are both bad. The defense sees some injuries. Obviously, I'm trying to take away injuries from like floor predictions, because obviously if a team were to lose like Tom Brady or Patrick Mahomes, then obviously they're going to be a lot worse. But my over-under prediction, I would lean towards under, despite my record prediction being 8-9. I do think that's closer to their peak than their average. I think the average for the Steelers this year is like rather 6 to 9 wins, and you're kind of like rolling the dice there on a bet. So I wouldn't really bet the Steelers either way this year. I just completely stay away from it in terms of a future. But I would, if I were to bet this, I would slightly lean towards under, despite me giving them an 8-9 prediction, if that makes sense. Okay, so there's the Pittsburgh Steelers. Our first team is down, and hopefully that wasn't too long there. But yeah, this is gonna be the way we go. All right, next up is the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals are next. And the Bengals won this division a year ago. Not only did they win this division a year ago and capitalized off an injured Baltimore and a bad Ben Roethlisberger and a bad Baker Mayfield, but this team went to the Super Bowl and wow, Joe Burrow, he broke out like nobody's business. Jamar Chase was dominant at wide receiver. We saw what T. Higgins can do. We know what Joe Mixon can do. And this defense in the playoffs, I think it's the main storyline that people are forgetting. They were awesome in the playoffs and a very good game plan specific defense. I look at this team as, once again, a playoff team. There's this kind of noise going on with the Bengals that a lot of people view them as a team that could disappoint this year, take a step back this year. But when you really look at what they've done this offseason and you look at the talent they have, you look at an ascending roster, you look at an ascending quarterback, you look at an ascending receiving core, you look at a better offensive line that really fixed some of their main flaws. They added depth to the secondary. There's no real area where you could logically say they are worse from a roster perspective. Yes, their division should be tougher in terms of the Ravens and Lamar being healthy, but that is just kind of beside the point. I feel like the Bengals just got started last year. I understand they kind of got a fluky playoff run, but that comes down to playoff predictions. When you're talking about the regular season, Joe Burrow's an elite quarterback. They've got elite weapons. They improved their biggest weaknesses. When you look at that across the board, that should be a playoff team. And we look at the offense first. The Cincinnati Bengals offense, like I said, is a good unit, and I don't see many weaknesses here. It is interesting that they're leaning towards going with the rookie at left guard. So obviously Carmen Jackson, or Jackson Carmen, whatever his name is, he hasn't worked out at guard. Jonah Williams And Collins, I think, is a very underrated tackle duo. I think Kappa can play. It might be a little bit overrated just due to the fact that Tom Brady makes every offensive lineman better. Ted Karras is a good football player. Not elite, but he's solid. So when you go from, this is the thing about offensive line, right, guys? When you go from bad to okay, like that's a significant upgrade on the offensive line. Wide receiving core, the trio is the best there is in the game, in my opinion. And Joe Mixon is probably the least respected elite running back in football. So their offense is awesome, and I expect them to be more consistent this year due to the offensive line play. Defensively, they're very, very good. I mean, you look at this defense, and I think they could be better than they were last year. I think they could take off from what they were in the playoffs. I like the secondary, I think, more than other people do. I think Awuzie is pretty good. I like Hilton as a nickel corner. He's one of the best in the game when it comes to blitzing, when it comes to tackling, when it comes to being in zone coverage. I do think I'm intrigued to see what goes on with their safety rotation there. Obviously, Jesse Bates, he didn't even actually play that well in the regular season last year, but he was at his elite form in the playoffs. I think Pratt is somebody to watch as a breakout player at linebacker. Logan Wilson is another one that I think is a very good player that doesn't get enough respect. DJ Reader's a great run defender. BJ Hill's very good. Now, the areas where I don't like the Bengals so much is I don't love the defensive depth, especially on the defensive line. I do think if they lose Trey Hendrickson, they lose a significant piece of their pass rush. Trey Hendrickson's an awesome pass rusher, and that's why I put him in the elite category, because he's one of the most down-to-down effective pass rushers in the game. But if they lose Trey Hendrickson or even Sam Hubbard, their drop-off at the edge position and the interior defensive line positions are concerning. So for somebody that absolutely loves depth, and I very much look for depth on defensive lines, I am concerned about that, about this unit. So if the Bengals were to disappoint this year, I do think it would be because of injuries, specifically to their top players on defense, especially on the defensive line. And I do think there is a world where the defense regresses, but there's also a world where the defense progresses, depending on health, which is the total wild card for every team. But this team more so than other teams, because I feel like there's a drop-off from, let's say, if you lose Jamar Chase for any point in time, who's that fourth receiver going to step in, right, to be productive for this team? Is it Trent Taylor? I don't know. So, who are they going with there? If Joe Mixon gets hurt, which is a very real possibility, he's probably more valuable to the Bengals than to other teams, just because, Samaje Perine and Chris Evans, I'm not sold on them being able to take that workload. So there are definitely questions about the Bengals from a depth perspective, but if they can stay healthy, they'll be very good. And my record predicts that. My record for them is 11-6 this year. My ceiling is if everything goes right, their offense is just hitting on all cylinders. Joe Burrow takes another step forward. Jamar Chase is as dominant as ever. They could be the best team in the AFC, and that would be 13-4. Their floor is really 9-8, besides huge injuries, like I stated. I think they're still a winning team just because they've got a very good quarterback. They've got a very good offense. And when you have those things, you're going to be a good team. And I haven't brought up Zach Taylor one time yet, which I think just really showcases how, good the team is, that the coach isn't phenomenal. He's not somebody that you really talk about, but it's because he doesn't need to be. I do think the defensive coaching is better than the offensive coaching. And if I were to bet this over-under, I would take the over. I do think for whatever reason, people are not giving the Bengals their respect that they deserve. And I would take the over because I do see this team winning 10-12 games this year, most realistically. Again, if you are not predicting injuries, okay? So the Cincinnati Bengals will be a playoff team, but will they win the division is the question, okay? Let's get to the most controversial team in the NFL. That is the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns will be without Deshaun Watson for a majority of the season this year, which completely destroys any sort of upside that this team has this season. For 2022, the Cleveland Browns do not project well, in my opinion. And it's because their quarterback position is going to be in the bottom tier when it comes to Jacoby Brissett. They didn't make an outside move to bring in a Jimmy Garoppolo, to bring in somebody that has some experience winning football games. As much as I like Jacoby Brissett, the person, he's a great guy. He's actually the polar opposite of Deshaun Watson. He's not a very good quarterback. Is he maybe better than people think? Can he start games in a pinch? Yeah, maybe. But, I mean, I'd rather have Gardner Minshew than Jacoby Brissett. That's just my opinion. Now, when it comes to the roster, because I think a lot of people that are still going to be on the Browns are projecting success due to a ridiculous roster that people think exists, that to me doesn't really exist, okay? The roster is good, but let's just take a look at it. It's not great. Let's break it down, okay? Let's break it down here like DX said, okay? We've got the offense. The offense, good offensive line, right? Good offensive line. Batonio's amazing. Teller's amazing. Conklin's very, very good and has been every year of his career, basically. I think David Njoku, I put him in the good tier. I think he's going to have a breakout season. But man, oh man, oh man. Call me a hater. Call me whatever you want. I mean, Amari Cooper seems like a great guy, but he is so unreliable, especially at this point in his career as he gets older, as he continues to deal with wear and tear. This is a receiver that is charmin' soft, guys. Charmin' soft. And he's having to play out in the cold consistently. I do not like that for him. I also don't view Donovan Peoples-Jones as somebody that's threatening a defense, or David Bell, who runs an 8.4 40, being a very good player in this league. I could be wrong about that. Nick Chubb's phenomenal. And Kareem Hunt's great, but they're not changing games as running backs. So for me, the offense is just generally overrated besides the offensive line. And the scheme is very run-oriented and very play-action-oriented, which can help elevate Jacoby Brissett. But when you get in close games in this league, Jacoby Brissett is not winning you close games in this league, guys. I'm sorry, he's just not. Defensively, which a lot of these games for them are going to be close. I think their defense could be very good this year. I love their secondary. I really like their secondary. I think Greedy Williams could be really good this year. I think he could have a breakout season. Newsome in the nickel spot, or maybe even outside, could be very good in his second season. Denzel Ward is the most, underrated elite cornerback there is in the game. Their defensive line, especially their pass rush, could be very excellent. I'm concerned about the interior defensive line, which I think is absolutely terrible. Taven Bryan and Jordan Elliott are the projected starters. That is terrible. The linebackers, you got Owusu Karamoa, who could be an elite backer in this league one day. Anthony Walker is just always pretty good. John Johnson was disappointing in his first year, but should be better in his second. And the one thing I will say about the Cleveland Browns, guys, that I think is very intriguing is with more players, they've added a lot of players last year on defense. Maybe with the added improvement from just rapport and understanding of the system, they could play at a much faster, high rate, which makes them a very good defense this year that could help aid an offense without a good quarterback. And I do think that a healthy Baker Mayfield is a significant upgrade over Jacoby Brissett. That's just my opinion. Again, you can disagree if you like. But I think this team will be competitive. I think they'll be in games. I think they'll run the ball. I think that their defense will be competitive again. But at the end of the day, when the game is 20-20 and you're playing, bro, even if they're playing like Mac Jones right now and it's 20-20 and it's Jacoby Brissett on the other side, I'm taking Mac Jones, so the Cleveland Browns, I'm going 6-11 this year. I just don't see them winning that many games without a quarterback. Their ceiling is 10-7. If somehow we get career production out of Jacoby Brissett and this defense can just dominate, which I guess is possible. Their floor is 4-13. Deshaun comes back. Even when he comes back, he looks like absolute trash. The over-under is 8.5, which I think is ludicrous. I'm taking the under there. I will take the under all day on the Browns. And I'm sorry, Browns fans. I try not to be biased, whatsoever. But if there is a team that I'm legitimately rooting against this year, it's probably your team. I just think your team makes the NFL look bad this year. I just do. I'm sorry. I usually like the Browns, right? But I just can't this year with you guys. So the Browns are a no-no for me. Next, we've got the Baltimore Ravens. All right, the final team in the AFC North. The Baltimore Ravens, I have winning the AFC North, and I have as one of the top seeds in the AFC. I made that change about a couple of weeks ago, three weeks ago maybe. Lamar Jackson, I think, is going to have a huge year this year behind a better offensive line. We don't know what's really going on with the running backs quite yet. That could be a problem for them. But, I mean, Lamar makes any running back look better, and I do think if they don't have their healthy running backs, I do think that Lamar can drop back and make some plays as a passer, more so than people think out there. I also think the addition of Isaiah Likely could be very interesting in their passing game, along with Mark Andrews and Rashad Bateman. Bateman, I expect to have a huge breakout season. For the Baltimore Ravens, I just view them as a very consistent franchise. I rarely bet against the Baltimore Ravens because they have a great quarterback, they have a great coach, they always play strong special teams, they've always got a very formidable defense, they're making a change on the defensive side of the football. So let's start there with their defense. The defense is going to be a little bit different. I do expect them to play a little bit more conservatively than they have in the past, I guess. Like, I don't expect there to be quite the Don Martindale madness of the blitzing that they used to take and used to do. I think it's going to be more coverage oriented, this defense. And I do expect their secondary to come through with a big season. Marcus Peters is back. He's a ball hawk. He changes this defense. Marlon Humphrey is a very good cornerback. He's one of the best in the game with great versatility and great playmaking ability. Kyle Fuller adds to the depth. I also like some of the younger corners that they brought in as through the draft. Marcus Williams, I think, could be the biggest addition that they've made for, seasons. I think Marcus Williams is phenomenal, especially as a general of the secondary back there. Chuck Clark and Hamilton, who was a first-round pick, should do well as a rotation at safety in the box. The linebackers, could Patrick Queen take a step forward potentially? Josh Bynes is just always there and always okay. But Patrick Queen is really the guy that could be the wild card for this team. I think Bowser is extremely underrated. I think Away could have a breakout year. Pierce is good, and they get him back. He really makes their interior run defense very strong. Calais Campbell can still play at a high level. This is a team that's not going to wow you from a bunch of big names perspective, but they just play a unique style of football. They play a unique, consistent brand of football. They're very physical. They're very tough. They win in the margins. John Harbaugh's an incredible, just feel for the game coach in terms of going for it, in terms of knowing when to make those decisions. Lamar Jackson's just the guy last year played with more heart than any player I saw last year in terms of the big moments, that comeback against the Colts. I think, again, Lamar's going to have a big year this year. Looking at the offensive line, Ronnie Stanley is awesome if he's back there healthy. Mark Andrews is arguably the best tight end in the league. I do think they'll get some production out of guys like Devin Duvernay and Prochet, etc. But the offensive line is really where I like them and feel confident about them, right? I view the offensive line as a much better unit this year. I just think that their offensive line is going to be able to dictate the terms of the offense. Because last year, they lost Ronnie Stanley. They had really a lot of guys beat up on the offensive line. And Villanueva was really bad at right tackle. Like, it was just hard for Lamar to have consistent protection. It was hard for them to consistently run the ball. But I think when you combine their scheme with that talent on the offensive line And as long as they have consistency at tackle, I just think that raises the floor of this offense significantly. It helps them pick up blitzes better, which they struggled against last year. I just think that they'll be able to play Baltimore football a lot better than they did last year. And I think that makes them a very good football team this year. At the very least, a playoff team. You know, I could be wrong. I really like the Bengals as well. So I think the Bengals could easily win this division. But the Ravens are my choice here, going 12-5. I have their ceiling being 13-4. I have their floor being 8-9, kind of similar to last year where they have a lot of injuries. They lose guys on the offensive line. You know, maybe the receivers don't work out. Maybe Lamar's kind of beat up all year, like that sort of thing. If I were to bet on this team, though, I would take the over. I know that that's a high number, but I would take the over this year. I like the Ravens a lot, man. I just think they're a very tough, competitive football team that is going to be clutch in those big moments, and you know you can rely on that with the Ravens. So the Ravens are one of my favorite teams in the AFC this year. Okay, let's get to the AFC South, which is our second division. If you guys haven't already, make sure you do Gronk spike the like button, subscribe to the channel for more NFL content and predictions. Let's get it with the Tennessee Titans. The Tennessee Titans are the first team we're going to break down in the AFC South. They just had a huge injury to Harold Landry, who was their best edge rusher last year. That's going to put some stress on their defensive line. You know, I made a video about their defense. I was very excited about it going into this year, and that is a significant blow to this defense, which absolutely kills the momentum that I thought this team had and offered. I haven't really changed my prediction or record prediction based on that single injury, but it definitely hurts the potential upside. You know, I viewed this team as a team that, you know, maybe they make the playoffs this year, maybe they win the division this year, but they're kind of on the outside looking in. Like, honestly, they're on the outside looking in. I don't know if they've got enough on offense. So let's talk about their offense. I think their offense is just not great on the offensive line. I'm not a fan of the offensive line. I think Taylor Lewan could be just dust this year. I'm concerned about that. Brewer is not great. You know, whoever starts at right tackle, Redunds, whoever it is, they're not great. Okay. Davis is a good run blocker, does struggle in pass protection sometimes. Ben Jones is a very good player, but he is getting older. Ryan Tannehill has been a good quarterback the last 3 years, but you look at how he regressed last year. Was that due to the system, due to the offensive line, due to the lack of Derrick Henry, due to the lack of receivers? You know, what was that due to? I think Tannehill can play at an average level, but I wouldn't expect much above that. I think Robert Woods is this team's best receiver. I'm not very high on Treylon Burks, especially considering the reports out of camp. I do think he's going to take some time to develop. So this is going to be an offense that's going to be very predictable. They're going to be very much a Derrick Henry-centric offense. They're going to have to run it down your throats. And I don't think this team is going to be very good in drop back pass situations whatsoever, especially post A.J. Brown. I do think Austin Hooper helps the tight end position a little bit, but I don't know if that's significant enough. And I don't know if Robert Woods can be a number one at this stage of the game in his career. The Titans, guys, I don't love the offensive scheme. I don't love the offensive coordinator. I don't love the passing game in general. So really, what I love about this team and what I like about this team and what I respect about this team is Mike Vrabel, his coaching, his toughness, the identity that he brings to his team, his aggressiveness. I think that this is a team that's never afraid. I just feel like they never back down. And the defense is a unit that I also do like. I did replace Landry on the graphic, unfortunately. Dupree is going to have to step up. 100%. If he doesn't step up, this defense, this pass rush could not nearly be what it was projected to be earlier this offseason. Danico Autry will likely see more snaps at edge as he did last year due to the fact that Bud Dupree was injured a lot last year. So if Dupree can replace what they had in Landry, then maybe this defense is as good as I thought it could be. But if Dupree can't do that, then it's going to be a lot of pressure on Simmons to create up the middle and to create pressure up the middle. The secondary, I do think can be really, really good. I think they're all young. They're all ascending. Fulton is somebody that I think is taking steps into being a excellent corner. You know, I ranked him as the 20th best corner entering the season this year. Elijah Molden is an underrated, slept-on nickelback. Caleb Farley's got a ton of talent, but can he put it together? Kevin Byard is maybe the best safety in the league. Amani Hooker is, last 2 years, been one of the best safeties as well, and that's one of the best duos in the league. Long and Cunningham are a very nice, underrated duo. Cunningham struggles in pass coverage, but he's very good against the run. Long is just a well-rounded player. Overall, I think that the Tennessee Titans will struggle to maintain their success over the last couple of years due to their offense sputtering in moments, due to the loss of Landry that I think is going to hurt the defense and not be able to, I don't think the defense is quite great enough to carry this team to a division crown. I do think they'll be game in, game out competitive, but kind of like the Steelers, I just don't have enough confidence in the offense. I'm going to go with an 8-9 record this year. I do think their ceiling is winning the division, barely over a team like Indianapolis. Mike Vrabel can boost them to that potentially, but I don't know if they have enough. My floor is 6-11. My over-under, I am taking the under on the 9.5, and I do feel fairly confident in that. I think there's too many questions about the offense. I think there's a large possibility that Malik Willis could be playing by the end of the year for this team. And I think whenever you can say that about a football team, that is not a great sign, okay? So 8-9 is my record prediction for the Tennessee Titans. By the way, though, Malik Willis did look pretty good in the preseason, at least athletically. He's going to take some time progressing in terms of the mind department, but we kind of all knew that. So the Titans, not as high maybe as some people, but I do think most people project a step back for them this year after what was an incredible season last year, truly overcoming a lot of injuries to get the first seed. The next seed is the Houston Texans. The Houston Texans are our second team in the AFC South, not by record, but that we're going to discuss here. The Houston Texans are a team that I could really see being better than I think, depending on Davis Mills and the offensive line and the defensive line. There's things that I like about all three of those things. I think Davis Mills is a very calculated, smart quarterback. He does not make a ton of mistakes. He is fairly accurate, and he was a lot better with a very bad team around him than a lot of people gave him credit for last year. The offensive line has made improvements this offseason, including in the draft, but when you just look at it, it does have some upside to be better, at least average, if not better than that, which could open up run lanes for Pierce and could help protect Davis Mills. And then you look at the defense, and I think the biggest area where they're very underrated is perhaps the pass rush. They've got layers of pass rushers that can get after the quarterback. Maybe not household names, but players that can play. And the same could be said about the secondary. A secondary that, especially at cornerback, has many players that I don't feel any of them are truly elite unless Stingley can take that jump as a rookie, but that's hard to do. Their cornerback group does have a ton of guys that can just play, like flat out play to a solid degree. So that's something that you do like about the Texans. So speaking positively about them right now, looking at the offense, there are plenty of weaknesses though. So we look at the offense. Brandon Cooks, we know, is their best player probably on their entire team. He just continues to succeed. He continues to do his thing year after year, no matter what team he's on, no matter what system he's in. They did add Tyler Johnson. I do project him as a starting slot receiver, taking the spot for what was supposed to be John Mechie. Hopefully John Mechie is doing all right now. wish him the best in his recovery. Left tackle, Tunzel can play at an elite level, but hasn't really for the past couple of years. Kenyon Green can right away be a pretty productive left guard. At center, Justin Britt is not great, but he can be okay. Same as Can at right guard. Titus Howard is somebody that's been inconsistent, but he's shown flashes to be able to play at tackle. I think the problem with Howard is that he's played a lot at tackle and guard, which has just overall hurt his career because he's been having to switch to both spots consistently. Brevin Jordan is somebody that I think has upside. I think he can be somebody that breaks out. It's just, when you see all these weeks, right? Jordan, Howard, Britt, Tyler Johnson, Mills. Like a lot of these players, when you look at Mills, when you look at Jordan, when you look at Howard specifically, and Can even, all of these guys could be better than just weak. They could be better than weak players, which makes the Texans a tricky team because I feel like, again, just like last year, they could kind of pull off some wins that you don't expect. Dameon Pierce could be an electric rookie running back. A lot of people are high on him right now in fantasy, and I see why. The guy breaks tackles. He's a maniac out there. He's kind of like the next coming of Doug Martin for the for the NFL. He's just a muscle hamster machine. Nico Collins is another guy that I would really hate to miss and not talk about. Nico Collins is somebody that could also take a jump. So you're looking at a receiving core that could be better than people think, but it's really going to depend on if these young players can take a step forward. Defensively, you look at their defense, and their defense definitely has more like just kind of well-known qualities, well-known players than we kind of know about the offense. Like the offense is a lot more like hit and miss. We don't really know. We can't really project it. The defense is a lot more like I kind of know what they are. And I do think they're going to be in some games a little underrated. I think Lopez in the interior defensive line is a pretty strong player in terms of run defense. Malik Collins is kind of the opposite. He's more of a pass rusher, and he does fit this Lovie Smith defense very prototypically well. Greenard is a very underrated pass rusher. He is very consistent in that regard. They also have Jerry Hughes. They have a couple players like, I forgot. I think they added Addison. It was one of the Bills, but they've got a lot of veteran defensive ends that can play as well. Kirksey is another guy that's been around. Grugier Hill, that guy stood out in preseason. And last year, I thought Grugier Hill was very good for them last year. But the thing that stood out for me, he got seriously injured last year, and he came back in the preseason. He's already looking fast once again, so good for him. Steve Nelson, the veteran corner from Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, they added him. He's just okay, right? Desmond King's good when he plays. Stingley, we'll see what he is as a rookie. I do think Petrie flashed in the preseason as a rookie, so they do have a lot of young promising talent, but I don't know how much that's really going to convert to wins this year, right? So I'm being very positive about the Houston Texans because I don't think a lot of people are positive besides their fans about this team. But I do think that there's some young players that could surprise, like Petrie, like Pierce, like Kenyon Green. These guys are all, I think this could have been a home run draft based on all the names that I'm just going over here. On top of that, I just feel like Nick Caserio has done a very good job of adding veteran, underrated, cheap additions that can help raise the floor for this football team and help keep them competitive until they find the true franchise pieces, because they're still missing franchise long-term pieces, in my opinion, at tackle, on the offensive line, at quarterback, at receiver, maybe at pass rusher, but those things could change in the near future. I think the Houston Texans are going to go 4-13. Okay, so it's a similar record to last year, but I do think their ceiling is higher this year. I think they got kind of lucky last year in a couple of games where they ended up beating up on, Jacksonville, who was just downright putrid at the beginning of the year. They beat the Titans with like nobody on their team later in the year in like a rainstorm. They also had a veteran presence at quarterback who was able to come in, Tyrod Taylor, at the beginning of the year and kind of stabilize things. Their roster has improved. Their potential has improved. But the overall record, I don't think really improves much. The over-under, I'd still lean towards the under, but I don't think I'll be betting it at 5.5. So the Texans are a team that, I don't know. I don't love them. I don't hate them. I hope they do well, but I'm not super high on them either. So that's the Texans. Jacksonville's kind of different for me. I think Jacksonville's a young football team with plenty of young talent, a new coaching staff, a lot to be excited about in Jacksonville. I think Jacksonville can be the surprise team of the AFC this year. I made a video about them being the next Cincinnati Bengals. I think there's a real possibility this season that Jacksonville wins this division. I think that is a possibility. Will I predict that? Well, you'll have to see here in a few minutes. But I do think that Jacksonville has the potential to win this division. And it's not just all about Trevor Lawrence, because I think there's a lot of previews. There's a lot of YouTubers that are going to come out here and they're going to say, Jacksonville, they could take that step forward due to Trevor Lawrence being the generational talent. That's not what this is actually about, guys. What this is actually about is the defense and the coaching. So let's first talk about the coaching, which is pretty simple. They go from the worst coach that anyone has ever seen in their life, Urban Meyer, to a Super Bowl winning coach who consistently got more out of less in Philadelphia and for whatever reason was booted out of that franchise. And this guy won a Super Bowl with Nick Foles. He went to the playoffs once again and made some noise and made them competitive against a much better Saints team in the playoffs that one year. So Doug Peterson just consistently outperformed. He really took a guy like Carson Wentz and made him an MVP candidate. So when you look at that, I just think Doug Peterson is a huge upgrade from Urban Meyer in terms of professionalism. You also have Mike McCoy in the building, who's a former head coach, who's the quarterback coach, who can help Trevor Lawrence in his young years progress. But then we talk about the unit that I really love, which is the defense. The defense I really like, okay? This defense could be much better than people think. The defensive line is really underrated. I think that Trayvon Walker has flashed in the preseason, has a ton of upside as both a disruptive run defender and pass rusher. I expect him to slide into the interior in moments on passing downs. Josh Allen, I think, just from the support of others around him, like Fatukasi and Trayvon Walker, I think that he could actually take a step forward into, he's already a good player, right? But he could take a step forward into being like an elite player this year. I could see that as well. I think their interior defensive line and their defensive line depth in general is underrated. Arden Key is there. Hamilton is another player that I like. So they've got a rotation of defensive linemen that can all play at a high level. Their cornerbacks, I think, are really underrated. Again, I think Shaq Griffin is a solid corner. I don't think he's like a true number one, but he's like a high-end number two. Yeah, I did spell Fatukasi wrong. I saw that. Campbell is a young corner that got hurt in the Hall of Fame game. I think he's okay, though. He's somebody that I thought had a really underrated rookie season, could take a step forward in year two. Darius Williams was a good corner for the Rams. I think him playing nickel makes a lot of sense from a skills standpoint. Like, he's a smaller guy. He's quicker. He's smart. He's probably, not necessarily built for the outside, but you move him inside, he could be better there. They struggled a ton at nickel last year. Linebacker, Oluokun, I think, is going to be better for them than Miles Jack. Oluokun is just a supreme athlete. He reads the run game very well. He's very fast. He diagnoses things extremely well. And the thing I love about Oluokun, guys, is his reckless abandon. This guy plays with fire, like hair on fire. He's ridiculous in terms of just making plays at the line of scrimmage and from sideline to sideline. Devin Lloyd was a player I was very high on coming out of the draft. I thought they got a steal with him. for his versatility. Cisco, I rank him as weak because we haven't seen much of him. Dwayne Smoot, thank you, John, in the chat. I like Dwayne Smoot a lot. He's been good for a number of years. I like players like Dwayne Smoot. This is just a general point. I'm going to take this depth chart down for a second. This is a general point about me. I just like NFL players, being the nerd that I am. I like NFL players that have been like very solid players for like 4 or 5 years in a row. That's just like my, like, I don't know, like my kink or something. I don't know. I like NFL players that are like really solid, but they're like nothing special, but they're just really solid. Cisco, I loved coming out of the draft. We just haven't seen a ton of him, but he's very fast. I think he can make plays in the back end, roaming in the back end. Rishon Jenkins he's okay. I would like to see better from him this year, but that's a defense that I like a lot. Now, talking about the offense, where you've got Doug Peterson and you've got Mike McCoy, as I stated there. Marvin Jones kind of looks like dust. I'm going to be honest. I'm not very confident in his production right now, but I do like Zay Jones in terms of giving a nice possession receiver for Trevor Lawrence. I think Christian Kirk is, he kind of got memed this offseason, but I think he's a nice addition there. He could be the number one for Trevor. Even Jamal Agnew can make plays. Their offensive line is not my favorite. I think there's significant weaknesses at right tackle and left guard. I'm worried about that. Center is also a question, but I think that Scherf should help the run game. I think ETN is going to have a huge year this year for sure. Trevor Lawrence could have a good year. But like I said, I don't think Lawrence is going to have to be one of those young quarterbacks that like spams. Like, I don't think he's going to have to like pass a ton. I think they're going to run it a little bit. They're going to rotate ETN and Robinson in the backfield. They're going to do some creative things with ETN, playing receiver, playing running back, screen game, all that sort of stuff. Robinson's going to be more of the goal line, in between the tackles guy. And I think Lawrence, if he could just make some big downfield throws and rely on the defense to make plays, I think this team could be very competitive. So I'm very glowing about this team because I see a lot of potential. But realistically, my prediction is 7-10, which is a huge jump from last year. I mean, they were the worst team in the NFL last year. So this is a big jump for them, 7-10. But their ceiling is winning the division and going 10-7. I really contemplated going 8-9 and putting them above the Titans, but at the end of the day, guys, I just have too much respect for Mike Vrabel, to be honest with you. So I have too much respect for Mike Vrabel to put the Jags above the Titans, but I do see them going over their win total this year of 6.5. I do think that they can win 7, 8, 9 games this year and surprise some people. I would be disappointed if they went, 4-13 or whatever. Like, that would be significantly disappointing for them, given the additions that they've made, given that Trevor Lawrence should take a step forward in year 2, given that their coaching should be so much better than last year. Them going 4-13 would be highly disappointing. I think a lot of people are projecting 5-12, 6-11, which is totally cool. I'm at 7-10. Let me know where you guys are at with the Jacksonville Jags. Can you guys please stop posting emojis in the chat? That's kind of annoying, but thank you guys for commenting anyways. So there is Jacksonville. Okay. Jacksonville. Now, let's finish the AFC South with the Indianapolis Colts. The Indianapolis Colts are going to be the winners of the AFC South this year. I was pretty high on them. Like mid-off season, I was starting to buy into the Matt Ryan hype, buy into the Frank Reich with Matt Ryan, with a strong defense, with a good running game. I do think this team has potential to make some noise this year as an AFC team, but I don't quite see them in that AFC contender tier. I don't quite buy them as a true AFC contender, and there's a specific reason for that. And maybe you call this crazy or whatever, but I'm really telling the truth when I say this. Like, watching Matt Ryan in preseason, I wasn't, ecstatic about what I saw from Matt Ryan. I saw an older quarterback who, didn't quite have a ton of arm strength. And I saw that last year too. Highly affected by pressure. Somebody that's going to have to rely on a system almost entirely to be successful. I feel like Matt Ryan, I thought he was going to be, maybe he'll surprise me. I hope he does. But I look at Matt Ryan right now, and I view him as what Phillip Rivers was 2 years ago. I really do. And that's disappointing, because I thought that Matt Ryan was going to be, better than that. I thought that he was still going to be able to show some flashes of not elite play, but like being able to elevate a team a little bit. I just don't know if he still has that ability. So and this is just based on like 4 drives in the preseason, but I just didn't see a lot of zip on the ball. I just saw a guy that his arm looked a little shot. I'm a little concerned about that. So that's what opens the door for Jacksonville a little bit, in my opinion. But this team is really, really solid on both sides of the ball. Frank Reich is one of my favorite coaches in football. I love what he does offensively. I love the way that he calls plays. I love the way he scripts things. I love the way that he elevates quarterback play through play action, through easy completions, through, downfield concepts that he consistently offers up that are always somehow open. And you'll always see in every Colts game like a couple big plays down the field where a guy's wide open. That should help Matt Ryan, a guy that really does need help with his down the field football. And this is something that has probably been a problem for Matt Ryan for the last like 2 or 3 years, dating back to when Julio was complaining about Matt Ryan not being able to get the ball to him down the field. So that's something that I do worry about a little bit. But looking at the offense itself, I do think that Matt Ryan is going to be supported by a very good running game. I think Jonathan Taylor will be the best or the second best or, one of the best running backs in the NFL. Then you have an offensive line that Matt Pryor's being slept on with as the left tackle. I know a lot of people are like, oh, who's going to play left tackle? Who's going to play left tackle? It's going to be Matt Pryor. He played good last year for them. He's going to play good. This is something that I think people are underestimating about their team last year. So Eric Fisher played left tackle for them last year, and their left tackle he didn't play like all the time. I think he missed a large portion of the season. But their left tackle spot last year was kind of an issue already. So I think Pryor just being there and being there for hopefully 16 games will be fine. Then Quentin Nelson was not, dominant last year, but he was very good. And he's one of the best guards in football. Ryan Kelly typically is very good, but again, did not have his best season last year, which is surprising to say because Jonathan Taylor was so powerful. So the thing is about Jonathan Taylor this year, you could argue that his offensive line, other than Mark Lewinsky, who played his best last year and left, right? Other than Mark Lewinsky in the right guard position, where I'm a little bit concerned about that spot, especially with a Matt Ryan who needs interior blocking more than Tom Brady, guys. We'll talk about that on the NFC breakdown. But the right guard spot is a little concerning, but Jonathan Taylor should destroy this year, and we'll see how involved he is as a receiver. Nyheim Hines is going to be more involved this year as a receiver, I think, because of Matt Ryan, because of his mind. The one thing that I think Matt Ryan gives you a massive upgrade, no matter how shot his arm is compared to Carson Wentz or any other quarterback. Matt Ryan is so much smarter than Carson Wentz. It's not even like a discussion. It's 2 different worlds, 2 different planets. It's Mars and Jupiter. Mo Alley Cox could have a good season this year as a breakout candidate for this offense. The other breakout candidates reside at wide receiver 3 and wide receiver 2. Alec Pierce, the rookie. Paris Campbell, who's just had talent but hasn't stayed on the field. That's why he ranks as weak, because I have no idea really what he is, but he's flashed. Michael Pittman could take that step into elite status at wide receiver. Certainly flashed last year. Certainly had a great season last year. Even with Carson Wentz, was consistently their best receiver out there. So this offense should be good. But the offense, in my opinion, is largely a good unit because of what Frank Reich can do, scheming things, and because of Jonathan Taylor and the run game, and then how the pass game can benefit from that. As long as Matt Ryan can get the football to his receivers at a consistent rate, can make, quick reads, quick decisive decisions, he'll keep the offense on schedule, and they'll be able to dice up defenses this year much better and much more consistent than the Colts did last year, which is supported by a pretty darn good defense. The defense is very good all around. They don't have very many weaknesses. The big weakness with the Colts defense that stands out to me is the second perimeter corner spot, which is Brandon Faxion. He played for the Raiders last year. He wasn't very good. And he played in this scheme with Gus Bradley in Las Vegas. Wasn't very good. If you guys remember the Bengals game in the playoffs, they consistently picked on this guy, consistently. And I watched the preseason game against Tampa Bay. He gave up a long completion to Julio. He's just not a very good player. I am concerned about that second corner spot. I do think that Gilmore is going to be great this year for them. I think that was one of the best pickups that nobody's talking about this year is Stephon Gilmore. I think he's going to have a phenomenal year. I think, obviously, Kenny Moore is amazing as the nickel corner. You do wonder, getting a little bit older at nickel corner, but Kwity Paye could have a breakout year this year, entering his second season. Buckner's a beast. Stewart's one of the most underrated D tackles in the league. Yannick Ngakoue is going to provide very good pass rushing presence, but is not very good against the run. Shaquille Leonard, which I'm still getting used to saying, is a great player. My favorite linebacker, the best linebacker in the league. Nick Cross is a rookie. I liked his speed and his playmaking ability coming out of the draft. I think that's interesting. Julian Blackmon's back. I think this could be a top 5, top 10 defense this year, led by, Buckner and Gilmore and Leonard. So the Indy defense is very good, and that's why I have my confidence in the Colts still, because even though I'm a little bit worried about Matt Ryan, I do feel like the Colts can piece together a schematically sound offense with a very strong defense, and that is why I have the Indianapolis Colts winning this division at 10-7, and I've got the ceiling at 12-5. I've got the floor at 8-9. I think their floor is basically the same as last year, right? They look like they're going to win the division the whole season, but then they fall off at the end. The over-under is 9.5. I would lean towards the over. I think 10-7 is a rather conservative prediction because this is a weak schedule. The Colts play a weak schedule. They could easily win 11 or 12 games, which is why their ceiling is 12, despite not having an upper echelon offense or quarterback. Usually teams that can go 12-5 have those things, but the Colts don't really. They're just more of a well-rounded team. So yeah, I got the Colts winning the division at 10-7. I view them as just a very solid team that if they can run the ball at a high rate, if they can play very sound defense, they can beat just about any team in the NFL. So the Colts are the final team in the AFC South. All right, the AFC East is next. We're going to begin with, by no surprise, the team that I believe will win this division, which is the Buffalo Bills. I believe that Josh Allen will be an MVP candidate this year. I believe he'll play great football this year. I believe he'll be just as electric as ever. I believe he'll be as good as ever. The last 2 years, he's been phenomenal. You could argue that he's been the most valuable quarterback in the NFL from what he gives from a passing and a rushing perspective to a team. But I do believe that Josh Allen will be more consistent this season than he was last year. I do think he had high highs and he had low lows. But the thing about Josh Allen is you want Josh Allen to be playing at his peak come January. Because if Josh Allen is playing his best football at that time of the year, it's really hard for them to fail. And we saw them fail last year because of the defense. And that was really it. And because of some really boneheaded coaching decisions at the end of the game against the Chiefs. But I look at Josh Allen and I say, as long as this guy's playing his best in January, I don't think there's a better quarterback in football. When Josh Allen is playing at his best, he's the best quarterback in football. Does that mean he's the top quarterback all the time? No. I think he's the best quarterback at max level, if that makes sense, okay? With that, you've got an excellent defense. You've got a very sound coaching staff. They did lose Brian Daboll, but they've got a great defensive coaching staff with Leslie Frazier and McDermott himself, Sean McDermott. And then an offense and a defense that's full of depth, full of talent, full of ballers. Let's look at the offense first. Now, the question is about the offense. The offensive line, can they go from like, they're kind of carried by Josh Allen's mobility to, they're actually pretty good? Can they make that jump? I do think Roger Saffold at left guard could help them open up some running lanes for Singletary, James Cook, Zach Moss, whoever they decide's running the rock that week. Mitch Morse is a good player when he's on the field. Roger Saffold can still play. Deion Dawkins is a very underrated quality left tackle. Quisenberry looks to be the starting right tackle. He's from the Titans. Another guy that can add some aggressiveness, some run blocking ability. Not the best pass blocker, but could add some physicality. That's the thing that I like about the Bills, that they established and they really got down and dirty this offseason, not with big names, but with guys that are going to be physical, right? Going to just Saffold, Quisenberry. We're going to get to the defensive side of the football too, where they added some beef, okay? Dawson Knox could take a step forward this year. Another one. He just seems to every year. Gabe Davis, I'm expecting a big season from him. I think Gabe Davis is going to have 1,000 yards. I think he's going to have 8 to 10 touchdowns this year, and I would draft him in fantasy. Isaiah McKenzie is a Patriot killer. Fast, one of the fastest receivers in the game. Quick. He's going to be the starting slot, but they've also got a couple other guys there to not sleep on as well, like Shakir, the rookie. I like what I saw, and Jamison Crowder as well. Stephon Diggs is elite. We know who he is. He's good. That's all I got to say about that. So the offense will be very, very good, mostly on the back of what Josh Allen can do, but they've got potentially a better weapon group this year with just younger progressing players instead of old, slow players like Emmanuel Sanders and Cole Beasley. No offense to those guys. They're legends. Okay, the defense. The defense is excellent. Now, when people say it's the best in the league, I don't quite believe them. It didn't show it at the end of the year when they needed to most last season. But I do think the defense is very, very good. And it's sound in basically every area. I mean, the thing that I love about the Bills' defense is the depth. I'm not wowed by the starting lineup. Like, you look at this starting lineup, like, it's good. It's good, right? But it's not the depth. It's the depth is what's really impressive about this team. On both sides of the ball, which is why I think they are the favorites to win the Super Bowl, because I think when it comes to contending teams, they can withstand an injury more so than other teams, okay? So if Von Miller were to go down, they can bring in another guy to come in and be productive, right? If Daquan Jones were to go down, they can bring in Jordan Phillips, and they brought back some guys, some tough guys that I think helped them. Shaq Lawson, Jordan Phillips, 2 names there. The corner position, I think, is better this year. I think Elam, athletically, is faster. I think he can play better man coverage than Levi Wallace. Dane Jackson played a lot of games for them last year and was actually very feisty. I wouldn't call him good, but he's very competitive. He's very feisty. That's kind of what you want as your 4th cornerback, right? Tre'Davious White should be back early in the year. That's why I list him as a starter here. He's not going to be playing the first game against the Rams, but he'll be back and he'll be good. I do wonder if he'll be the same player right away, but I do think he'll still be good by the end of the year, which is hopefully where he's peaking, right? Matt Milano is an excellent football player. Tremaine Edmonds is overrated, but he's still good. Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer are arguably the best safety duo. You do wonder about their age, right? If there is one area where the Bills don't have a ton of depth that you really know is like good, is safety. And that's kind of what I worry about, because with Hyde and Poyer, they're so consistent. They're so reliable. They're so big for this defense. If they lose either one of them, I think that's a pretty significant loss to what they can do on defense either way. But overall, guys, this is probably the deepest team in football, or one of them at least. Probably the deepest team in the AFC. They've got one of the best quarterbacks who has the upside to be the best quarterback in the game. They've got an improved physicality and toughness on the line of scrimmage on both sides. They've got an improved secondary, in my opinion. They've got the finisher and the clutch edge rusher now in Von Miller. And I think they got faster at corner, faster at receiver, and I think those things will help them against these AFC matchups in the playoffs. My record prediction for the Bills is 13-4. I have them as the number 1 seed in the AFC. My ceiling is 15-2. Their floor is 11-6, as long as Josh Allen is healthy, which was really last year. Their floor was last year, to be honest with you. They were inconsistent last year, which absolutely hurt them in their record and hurt them in the playoffs eventually. Because, what if the game against the Chiefs was in Buffalo last year, right? I don't know. I believe that game was in Kansas City. So, the Bills, I just feel like they're really good and they're really reliable because they've got so much depth, great coaching, and a great darn quarterback. So I got the Bills over the win total this year. Over. Give me the over. Okay. The next team in the AFC East is the Miami Dolphins. Miami Dolphins. Miami Dolphins are number 2 in the AFC East. Yes, I've got the Miami Dolphins at number 2 in the AFC East. That means I've got them above my New England Patriots. I've gone back and forth all offseason. All offseason. I really have. But when you just compare talent to talent, expectations, Miami Dolphins have to produce this year. Their team is stacked. They've got a ton of talent. They've got the fastest offense in the NFL. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Raheem Mostert, who looks as fast as he did in 2019 running through the Green Bay Packers defense. Chase Edmonds is fast. They added Cedric Wilson. They added Teron Armstead. They added all these pieces on top of having young ascending players like Javon Holland, like Jalen Phillips, like Christian Wilkins. They've got a ton of young guys that are getting better, that should be at the top of their game this year. The Miami Dolphins should be a really good team. Now, we look at their offense. Their offense is good on paper, but it mostly comes down to how well do they convert to this scheme, right? How well do they convert to this scheme? How quickly do they pick it up? How does Mike McDaniel, how good of a teacher is he, outside of having Kyle Shanahan by his side? And can Tua be able to make enough plays, right? So the offense's potential comes down to the quickness of the assimilation to the scheme and Tua's ability to make plays. And that's really what it comes down to. Because at the end of the day, when you've got Tyreek Hill, who still looks like he could be the best receiver in football, Jalen Waddle, who's arguably could be the best number 2 receiver in football, Mike Gesicki, who's a very good receiving tight end. I know he can't block, but he's a very good receiving tight end. An elite left tackle when he plays. Those are all pieces that are essential to an elite offense. Now, I do think they're going to struggle to run the ball in moments, especially early, because I feel like Now, Edmonds, I don't know if he could be the lead dog. I feel like it's going to be a pretty even split between Edmonds and Mostert, especially on the ground. I think Edmonds will get more work, obviously, on third down. But Mostert is trusted by Mike McDaniel here, all right? I am concerned a little bit about the offensive line. Austin Jackson at right tackle is a huge issue. Liam Eichenberg or whoever's playing left guard is a huge issue. Connor Williams has never played center before. So we'll see how they look in the first game against the Patriots. They'll certainly be tested there. Robert Hunt can play, though. I like him. Cedric Wilson's underrated. They've got plenty of weapons to work with. I'm not sold on Tua. Now, Tua's a huge question mark. Huge question mark for me. But he looks at his best this offseason. He's shown enough for me, like last year, where I was like, if this guy did have these elite weapons around him, he could be okay. Right? Tua to me is like in that Jared Goff tier where it's like he's propped up by really good players around him, but he's nothing special. Like that's kind of how I feel about him. His weakness is he doesn't have a lot of arm strength. He's not a great downfield passer. He's not very good under pressure. So the offensive line and the scheme are very important here. I think if McDaniel can get him on the move, running a lot of play action boot stuff, getting it out of his hand, getting him outside the pocket, allowing him to move around, being accurate, a lot of quick little RPOs, quick little slants and things, yak plays. If Tua can be like Jimmy Garoppolo with a little bit more like outside the pocket stuff, I think he can be successful in this offense. And I'm not a Tua fan. Like, you guys know this, right? But if he can be like the classic West Coast short passer with a little bit of play action boot, I think he'll be fine, okay? I think he'll be fine. He won't be great, but he'll be fine. Defensively, I think this defense is a top 10 unit, guys. I think this defense is very good. I think Jalen Phillips could be a star at pass rusher. Emmanuel Ogbah has proven to be a very good player 2 years in a row. Zach Seiler is very, very underrated. I think it's Seiler. But he's had 2 back-to-back very productive pass rush seasons. Christian Wilkins is a good player. He continues to get better. Byron Jones, okay, this is something that I forgot about. Byron Jones is actually hurt right now. I'm not sure his availability early in the year. That might hurt them early in the season because the one thing about the Dolphins is they love to play man coverage, and that is very much based on Howard and Byron Jones. Without Byron Jones, that's a huge drop-off to their next cornerback. So that could be a reason that their defense doesn't look as hot early in the year, if Byron Jones is not out there. I love Javon Holland, amazing player from Canada. Jerome Baker is, in my opinion, underrated. He's got great speed, can blitz, can do a lot of different things. Atlanta Roberts is not very good, and I love the guy, but he's just not very good. He's a thumper. So the Miami defense is good, but I don't think it will be at his peak until Byron Jones is back. Overall, I think the Miami Dolphins will be not just a competitive team, but actually a pretty good one. I think that their record will be pretty similar to last year, not because of they'll be as good as last year. I think they'll be actually better than last year and more consistent than last year. Last year, they started the season very poorly. I think this year it will be more spread out in terms of wins and losses. I don't think they'll quite go on that streak. I think it will take a little bit of time to adjust to new coaching, new head coach. That's always something that takes time. I do think that Tua will lose them some games, but I also feel like he's not, I do think there's going to be games where he's exposed a little bit if the offensive line doesn't protect him. But I do think that the defense will also win them some games, and Tyreek and Waddle and these playmakers can win them some games. So it's kind of like, I'm kind of like tug of war with the Miami Dolphins a little bit. This is a much tougher schedule than they faced last year. So all these things kind of combine into my record prediction of 9-8 for the Dolphins, which could get them in the playoffs. I mean, it's pretty close. Right now, I have them on the outside looking in. So my official prediction for them is the outside looking in on the playoffs. I think that they're a good football team, but I don't think they're quite consistent enough at quarterback. I do have my questions about the coach and the offensive line still. So That's why I keep them out of the playoffs, But if you said the Dolphins were like the 6 or 7 seed and they were 10-7, I wouldn't be mad at that. If you did say they would win the division, that's probably a bit high. Floor is 7-10. I think they've got a lot of talent, so keeps their floor pretty high. And if I were to bet the over-under, I think I slightly lean towards the over, but I'm not, in love with that bet either. So, the Dolphins. There you guys go. The next team we will discuss here is the New York Jets. Jets. The New York Jets. Man, the hype significantly declined when Zach Wilson got hurt. We know that Joe Flacco will be playing probably the first couple to few games this season, which hurts the upside for this team. This team has a lot more talent than people want to give them credit for, but I'm not in love with the coach. I'm not in love with the coaching staff, and I still feel like it's a lot of young talent that is yet to prove themselves. I do think the Jets will finish last in the AFC East, but they are a football team that I think are going to give a lot of teams trouble because they're good on the offensive line. A lot of people continuously say, the Jets are bad on the offensive line. I don't necessarily see that. As long as Dwayne Brown is what he was in Seattle the last few years, they'll be fine. They're good on the offensive line, I think. The defensive line is really strong. But again, they've got a lot of young pieces and a quarterback that, whether it's Joe Flacco or Zach Wilson, it's rather a young, unproven guy or an older guy that we know is not very good anymore. So looking at the New York Jets offensively, Breece Hall is the running back projected, but they do have Michael Carter as well. They'll probably split work at least early in the year until Breece Hall proves himself as the lead back, which I do eventually expect to happen. Zach Wilson will be the starter once he comes back. And I don't know, man. I haven't loved what I've seen from Zach Wilson overall throughout his young career and even the brief moments in the preseason. But I do believe in his talent, man. The guy has talent. Corey Davis can play, and he's like an afterthought in the receiving core with Garrett Wilson, Elijah Moore, and Braxton Berrios there. Garrett Wilson is a rookie. I don't know if he'll be like one of these huge rookies in year one, but I do think he'll produce. I do think Elijah Moore is their best receiver. He could have a breakout year. Dwayne Brown, like I said, good player when he plays. He's old, but he's still good. Lincoln Tomlinson knows this system well. I expect him to project in his move from the 49ers to the Jets. I project him to move into the left guard spot and play well. Connor McGovern had a very good year last year. Elijah Vera Tucker is only getting better as a young right guard. George Fant is a good tackle. Tyler Conklin is projected to be their top tight end. I've always been a fan of Tyler Conklin. I thought he had a very underrated season in Minnesota last year. Defensively, I think that they're, again, a lot more talent than people think. Sauce Gardner, the rookie, we'll see how he looks. DJ Reed had a very good year in Seattle. They signed him along with Jordan Whitehead out of Tampa Bay, who's a classic strong safety, a force in the box. Quan Alexander knows this system. They signed him. CJ Mosley had a very good year last year, tackling machine, very smart. I think he could even be better than he was last year because he's a year removed from the injury. Carl Lawson, excellent player. I expect a big year from him in his first year with the Jets. He basically missed all of last year. Quinnen Williams is awesome. John Franklin Myers is awesome. He moves back to the inside. I was a big fan of Jermaine Johnson out of the draft. But again, you guys see it, right? Young talent. Young talent at edge. Young talent at corner. Young talent on the offense at quarterback, running back, wide receiver. A lot of important positions. I do think there's a ton of talent, but I do think that talent will take time to assimilate to the NFL. I also think there are legit questions about Robert Saleh running the operation. So my overall projection for this team is 5-12 at the end of the day. I think their ceiling is 9-8. Their ceiling is 9-8 because, again, guys, if these young players hit and they're really, really good, and Zach Wilson comes back from injury and he's really, really good, which could happen, right? Could happen. Then, hey, man, they could make a run for a sneaky wild card because they're not one of these teams where they have absolutely no talent. But my record is 5-12. My floor is 3-14, where Zach Wilson comes back from injury. He looks terrible. He gets hurt again. Joe Flacco's bad. It's all a mess. Robert Saleh gets fired. All these young players turn on him. Like, that could very well happen, unfortunately, for the Jets. The over-under 5.5 is under for me if I were to bet it. Just because when your quarterback gets hurt at the beginning of the year and he's not projected to come back for a few games, and you never know how he might get hurt again, I'm just willing to bet the under there, okay? So the Jets are 5-12. The final team in the AFC East, the best for last, we've got the New England Patriots, my New England Patriots this season. A team that I honestly, for the first time in a long time, I don't know what to think about the Patriots this year. I don't know whether to buy in. I don't know whether to trust Bill. In Bill we trust. I don't know whether to be ecstatic about year 2 Mac Jones or to be worried about the new offense under Matt Patricia and Joe Judge. I don't know whether to be pumped up about the young defense or to be worried about a young defense. So there's a lot of questions here, but there's also a lot of potential that I don't think other people are seeing. So the Patriots are a team that I think could get back to the playoffs again this year based on Mac Jones taking a step forward, based on them getting faster and younger, based on them having a great coach and being great in terms of schematic improvements and things that they do from a weekly basis in terms of game plans. But I could also see them significantly underwhelming, and being just a team that you don't know what the future is going to hold for them. People starting to question Mac Jones, obviously people being like, who's the weapons? What's going on here? The defense not being good or as good as it was last year. So there's so many ways you could go with the Patriots, and I wouldn't really, agree or disagree with any of your opinions. So let's start with the offense. The offense, I feel like, is a fairly average offense. I do think they have the upside for more. I do think Mac Jones is going to be a very good quarterback this year for this team. I think as long as they put the ball in his hands and they make him the facilitator of the offense, I think he's going to do his thing. I think Mac extremely impressed me as a rookie. He just does so many things at a high level that you rarely see from a rookie quarterback in terms of processing, in terms of decision making, in terms of accuracy, ball placement. All those things are very, very much in the bag for Mac Jones. You do worry a little bit about his arm strength, specifically in the weather environment of New England. You worry about, at times, his ability, if he's going to regress, if he's going to have a sophomore slump, because did the Patriots do enough around him to elevate him, right? Is Devontae Parker the missing piece for Mac Jones? Personally, I don't know. They lose the rookie Tyquan Thornton, who is having an excellent camp, flashed a ton of speed and downfield ability. Once he comes back, maybe that unlocks the offense. Kendrick Bourne has had a bad offseason, apparently. Bad training camp. It's been a little bit of a nuisance. So can he be the guy he was last year and take a step forward as everyone thought he was going to? Jacoby Myers is consistent. He's reliable. Nelson Aguilar seems to be in a better place than he was last year. Hunter Henry's a great player. Very consistent tight end. Jonnu Smith, can he do better in this second year? So there's a lot to like too, right? Because Trent Brown's back, and he's back in his third year with the team. Hunter Henry, second year with the team. Jonnu, second year with the team. Kendrick Bourne, second year with the team. Stevenson, second year with the team, who really could be viewed as the starting running back. But Damian Harris was the starter last year. I think Stevenson could have a huge year this year, both as a rusher and a receiver. Their offensive line should be very good. On paper, it's one of the better units in the league, but they've struggled to assimilate to the new system, right? So the Patriots on paper don't have many weaknesses on offense, but they don't have many, extreme strengths. So those are things that you like and you dislike. Defensively, Devin McCourty's still amazing. Adrian Phillips had an underrated, phenomenal year. I thought he played at a Pro Bowl level last year. Kyle Duggar's a very good player. They've got the deepest safety core in the NFL with McCourty, Phillips, Duggar, Jabril Peppers, Joshua Bledsoe, and Miles Bryant. The cornerback position, I think, is underrated. I think that Jonathan Jones moving to the outside is going to be a good thing for this team. I think Marcus Jones flashed a ton. From what I've read, that he's been an amazing rookie at corner in a way that we haven't seen from New England in a long time. The last time I read buzz from a corner like that was J.C. Jackson, but he could be an electric nickel corner for them. Jack Jones also flashed in preseason, another young corner. So they're a lot younger in the secondary, but they could be better and they could be deeper even without J.C. Jackson. Juwan Bentley, just very solid linebacker as my alarm goes off. Sorry about that. Raekwon McMillan is a solid player. They missed him last year. They expected him to start last year. He didn't start last year because he got hurt. So they expect to see things out of him. I like the addition of Mac Wilson. He's fast. He can cover. That's something they needed at linebacker. Christian Barmore's been the best player at training camp, and I think could be one of the better interior defensive linemen in the league. Devon Godshaw, they paid him, also having a good offseason from what I've read. Matt Judon, beast. Dietrich Wise, solid. I think their defensive line could be a lot better than people think. And, we even see guys like Anthony Jennings and Josh Uche looking real good in preseason action. So I think the Patriots, I look at it this way. Early in the offseason, I was concerned about the defense. Now I'm concerned about the offense. I don't really know what to think. I don't know whether to buy in with the offense and the changes that they've made. I don't know whether to be really excited about a young defense that can fly around and that can potentially be good. So I'm going to be rooting for the Patriots heavy this year. I think a lot of people are doubting them. A lot of people are expecting them to take a step back. I kind of feel like they're about the same team as last year. I just think that it might take some time offensively for them to gel. And I feel like they're going to be at their best later in the year, which was the opposite of last year, where they were really good in the middle of the year and then they hit a slump. But they were bad at the beginning. They hit their stride. Then they hit a wall and then they sucked. So I think it's going to be kind of like this year. Clearly, the Dolphins are a more talented football team. They should on paper be better. But I think if you're looking at it from a Patriots fan perspective, you've got a lot of wild cards on this team for New England this year that could take big steps forward. And you're looking at a Mac Jones that I would take over Tua every day of the week. And I'd take Bill Belichick every day of the week over Mike McDaniel as well. So I think the Patriots and Dolphins are very close. I think you could go either way with those two teams. And right now I have them in third, and that's where I'll stand as my prediction this season. We're coming in as an underdog. We're coming in as a team that nobody believes in. Everybody's ready to count us out. So let's just take that expectation and run with it and hope for the best. But I think this team could equally surprise and disappoint. I've got them at 9-8. Okay, which is the same record as Miami. I just give Miami the slight edge because typically they beat us. Ceiling is 11-6. I think, they're a game better than last year record-wise. But I thought their schedule was easier last year than it is this year. But obviously, not playing Deshaun for the Browns now does help. That's probably a win that you wouldn't have gotten. The floor is probably 7-10. I just think this is a better roster than 2 seasons ago. With Cam Newton, it's a better roster than 2 seasons ago. There's no doubt. They won 7 games with Cam 2 years ago, and they were terrible. They had no receivers, no tight ends, no nothing. So really, their floor is 7-10 for me. Belichick's too good of a coach for them to lose any more games than 10. So they're probably just an average team this year, with a little bit upside to be a little bit more. That's kind of how I view the Patriots. They're an average team. I've got the over. If I were to lean either way, I'm just going to bank on Belichick doing his thing. All right. So Patriots 9-8 in the hunt not in the playoffs. Okay, the final division here. Let's end it with the Denver Broncos beginning the most competitive division in the NFL, the AFC West. The Denver Broncos are a team that I wanted to buy in instantly with Russell Wilson. But this is an extremely difficult division. Extremely difficult from top to bottom. You got Patrick Mahomes, Derek Carr, Justin Herbert. But not only do you got great quarterbacks, you've got phenomenal rosters, good coaches. Like, all teams in this division are going to be good. There's no doubt. Even the worst team in this division is going to be good. I have all of these teams in this division with a winning record. That's how good this division is. And if there is a division that all 4 teams could make the playoffs, it might be this division, okay? That is now possible with the 7 teams, right? I look at this Broncos team. Let's pick it apart, okay? Offensively, I made a video about them as well. The receivers, okay? Courtland Sutton could have a huge year. He also could disappoint, right? He's not DK Metcalf, but he has flashed number 1 receiver in the NFL type of upside. He could be really good. He's not a separator. He's more of a body you, win, jump footballs, that type of thing. Jerry Jeudy, I think, is going to be a very consistent over-the-middle target. And like I said in my Broncos video, it's up to Jerry Jeudy to succeed and to get the most out of Russell Wilson, because Russell Wilson has largely neglected the middle of the field. If Jerry Jeudy can unlock the middle of the field for Russell Wilson, this offense could be very good. Very good. Okay? KJ Hamler is a speed threat. He is coming off an injury, but he can make plays down the field. Russell Wilson, great downfield passer, magician behind the offensive line, can scramble around, can make plays. Javonte Williams is fantastic. I love that guy. The offensive line. Oh, by the way, Mike Boone. I don't know, man. Look out for Mike Boone as a backup to Javonte. I like what I saw on preseason. Melvin Gordon's still there as well, so they got plenty of depth at running back. Offensive line, Garrett Bowles is good. Dalton Reisner's good. Very good left side for the blind side of Russell Wilson, which will help him run around and move around and make plays behind the line. Cushenberry's okay. The rest of their offensive line is just fine. I'm not buying into the Albert O hype. I get that he's athletic, but that's, So the offense, I think, is going to be run game, and big plays. Run game, big plays. That's what I expect from it. That's what you expect from Russell Wilson. The defense, I think, could be a little bit overrated. I don't view them as a top 10 defense. I view them slightly outside of the top 10. The reason is, I think Bradley Chubb has been largely inconsistent. I think Randy Gregory has been largely inconsistent due to his off-the-field troubles, mostly. DJ Jones is very good. Love that addition, but he's been mostly a rotation player from San Francisco, not an every down player, so he's also moving schemes. The rest of their interior defensive line is just okay. The linebacker position is kind of weak. The corners, Surtain's very good. Surtain, very good. Kwan Williams is a very good nickel corner over the last few years, but he is getting older. Ronald Darby is somewhat inconsistent. Kareem Jackson's long in the tooth. Justin Simmons, amazing. Okay? So the offense, this is how I view it. Offense, underrated. Defense, overrated. Like I brought up in the Broncos video, I think that the defense last year, yes, they finished very highly in points allowed and yards allowed. They were not very good in advanced metrics. They were not very good in time of possession. They were not very good in plays allowed. They were not very good in yards per drive. They were not very good in those things. They kind of got lucky, okay? But if Chubb is back and he's healthy and Gregory is healthy, they'll be a top 10 defense. I just don't know if they'll consistently be on the field, to be honest with you. So the Denver Broncos, a lot of upside. I think if they get in the playoffs, they've got a talented roster, an X-factor quarterback, a quarterback that knows how to win, a quarterback that's clutch as hell, a quarterback that can make plays at the end of the game to put you over the top. So the Denver Broncos, no AFC team wants to see make the playoffs. But the question is, will they be consistent enough to make the playoffs? My record prediction for the Broncos is also 9-8. I could see them going 10-7 as well, or even 11-6. I don't see them having a very low floor. I think it's 7-10 at the very worst for them. I think 8-9 is probably a more realistic floor. But, their floor is more based off of just how good their division is. That's really what it's based off, because their division is so tough that it's going to give them losses, right? If they're in a different division, this is no doubt a playoff team. Their ceiling is 12-5. I think if everything goes right, if Javonte Williams breaks out, if Cortland Sutton's a number 1, if Jerry Jeudy's a great number 2, if Russell Wilson's Russell Wilson, if their defense is top 10, if all those things come together, they could be like the next Tampa Bay Bucks from 2 years ago, and I wouldn't be surprised by that. So, really, I wouldn't be surprised by any outcome from the Denver Broncos this year. I really wouldn't, guys. The next team in the AFC West is the Kansas City Chiefs. The Kansas City Chiefs are the next team in the AFC West. And I heard, one of my favorite analysts in the game, because he's out there, he's different, he knows, he says his opinion, he doesn't care what people think, and I know a lot of people dislike him for that very reason. I really appreciate what Chris Sims does. But this guy predicted the Kansas City Chiefs to win the Super Bowl this year. I don't get it. I don't see it. I don't understand it. Let's talk about it. The Kansas City Chiefs got Patrick Mahomes. Okay, that's awesome. Amazing. They got a very good offensive line. They've got Travis Kelce. Awesome. Chris Jones. Incredible. Andy Reid. Still arguably the best coach in the league. What else do they got? Valdez-Scantling and a rookie receiver and Juju with one knee. Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Frank Clark, who sucked for like 3 years in a row. I don't know, guys. This team is not what it was. It just isn't, but let's talk about it, okay? Okay, so the offense. Valdez-Scantling is a player that's projected to play on almost every snap, which is why I like him in fantasy, at least taking a chance on him, because he's probably going to play in 2 receiver sets and 3 receiver sets. He's the downfield option, right? Love Pacheco, Chiefer. I hope, Pacheco, he could be the breakout. I mean, he could be the next dude in Kansas City, the next breakout running back for them, like the Larry Johnsons and Priest Holmes of the world. He could be that. He could. But Juju, I'm not buying the hype. I'm not. I don't think he's got it anymore, especially coming into the season hurt. I'm concerned about that. Clyde, I just don't think he's very good. I'm sorry. And I loved him coming out of college. Mecole Hardman, he just never got it for me as a pure receiver. As a gadget player, I think he's great. As a pure receiver, I think he leaves something to be desired. I like Sky Moore. Hopefully he can crack this lineup. Travis Kelce's getting older, which I'm concerned about. He's starting to get spelled more, but I'm concerned about the fact that Travis Kelce is going to see a lot of double teams and he's getting older, so that hurts his value in my opinion. I just think Tyreek Hill was such a difference maker for this team, man, because of how much he commanded attention, right? He commanded double teams, right? So that to me is a huge loss, but I do think this offense will still be good and still be very good because they've got Patrick Mahomes. They've got a very good offensive line that I think is going to be, very consistent. I think they're going to be able to run the ball despite having bad running backs, to be quite honest. And I do think that Mahomes has a chip on his shoulder. I like to see that back with him there. And I do think Valdez-Scantling will flash. Sky Moore will flash. All these guys, Mecole Hardman will flash. I just don't know how consistent it will be in the big games at the end of the day, offensively, okay? Defensively, they might be better than I think, okay? Which I ranked them 24th. They might be a little bit better than that. I think Justin Reed could be a great signing for them, but he's not Tyrann Mathieu, right? Tyrann Mathieu was this hybrid gadget, like cover tight ends, cover slot guys, do blitz. Justin Reed's more of a traditional free safety. Juan Thornhill, he's okay. For whatever reason, they've been reluctant to play him more. For a lot of games, they were playing Daniel Sorensen, who's absolutely horrific. Bolton's good. I don't think he's elite the way that Chiefs fans think he is, but he's good. Willie Gay, he can cover, he can fly around. I like the combo there of the read and react of Bolton, the physicality, the downhill ability of Bolton, and the athleticism of Gay. I think that's a good combination. Chris Jones is amazing. He's my favorite player on this team. Frank Clark, man, I hope he's better this year because he's been just a bust for you guys other than the playoffs that one year. George Karlaftis, I think will be the starter, at least by the end of the year. He's looked real good in preseason. Fenton has been solid. L'Jarius Sneed's good. I think the corners are kind of underrated. I really do like the corners. McDuffie, the rookie. So, yeah, the defense, man, pretty good unit, but not great. So, the offense got worse. The defense probably is going to be more consistent this year because last year they were really bad and then, they were really bad and then they were really good and then they were really bad. It was really weird. So they were really bad, really good, really bad. This year, I just think they're going to be kind of okay the whole year, right? They're just going to be okay. They're going to be a little bit of spikes to good, and then they're going to be okay. I don't think you're going to see the really bad that you saw last year, though, unless their pass rush doesn't come through, which is possible. Offensively, I just don't think they're going to have that electric ability that they had in the past. I think they're going to be more of a possession offense. They're going to be more dink and dunk. They're going to be more reliant on Mahomes' playmaking ability. I think that could work out for them. I'm not quite sold about their run game, though. So for the Chiefs, I have their record as 10-7. I think they're going to make the playoffs as a wild card. And I think their ceiling is 12-5. Remember, their records the last, 2 of the last 3 years, despite them being very highly touted, their records were not amazing. So even last year, their record wasn't amazing. So 10-7 is my projection. Their floor is 8-9, and this would be pretty bad for them. That would be like if all their receivers just flat out suck. Their defense sucks again like last year, and in that case, that would be bad for them. If I were to bet on the over-under, though, I think I would take the under just because of the division. Honestly, that's just my opinion. I won't be betting that, though. I won't be betting that. Okay, the third team in the AFC West. The third team in the AFC West is the Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders are the team, that is not the Patriots or the Bucks, that have been very close to my heart this offseason. I've been all over the Raiders since they brought in Josh McDaniels, Chandler Jones, Davante Adams. I've been in love with the potential of this football team. I think the Raiders are the AFC team that people are not talking about enough. I understand that people they will praise some of the moves that they've made. They'll always say, they got Chandler Jones with Max Crosby. They got Davante Adams, Hunter Renfrow, Darren Waller. That's great. But you're still projecting them to finish last in their division. I know you are, right? So I am not. Okay. The Raiders, I think, are going to make the playoffs. The Raiders, I think, could be a legitimate threat in this conference. Let's talk about their units. So my projection, we're just going to put it out there right now so you guys know where I'm at. 11-6 is my record. I got them above the Chiefs. I know Chiefs fans are going to be absolutely pissed. I've got them at 11-6, second in the AFC West. Their ceiling is 13-4. Their ceiling is if Derek Carr plays like an MVP and if their offense is just unstoppable, which is possible, right? Their floor is 7-10. They have a lower floor than just about every other AFC West team because I do think they have less talent on the offensive line and on defense than the other teams in this division. You could argue the Raiders defense is about as talented as the Chiefs and the Chiefs, but they have less talent than the Broncos defensively. They have less talent than the Chargers. But yeah, I see them over their win total 100%. 11-6 is my record for the Raiders. Now, let's look at their depth charts, okay? So the first depth chart is the defense. So the Las Vegas Raiders defense. And I might not even have to look at the offense, to be honest with you. But the defense is, I think, underrated. I think this defense is going to surprise a lot of people. First, I love what I've seen in the preseason. I think they're flying around. They're playing fast. They're playing sound football. I think Max Crosby is one of the best edge players in the NFL. Top 3, top 4. I think Chandler Jones is going to benefit from having an elite player on the opposite side. He's a sack artist. He's an amazing player. Love Chandler Jones. Always have. Nichols was a great addition. Jonathan Hankins, those two guys can stop the run very well. Nate Hobbs has been getting rave reviews out of training camp. He could be a star of a corner, especially at nickel. Anthony Everett is a very underrated player coming from Baltimore. Rock Ya-Sin, they brought in from Indianapolis. So, completely new cornerback group that I think is underrated. Perryman is a good player. Very good in run defense. Morig is an ascending safety. Abram is the only guy I worry about, but with more of a in-box role, I think he could be a solid player for them. Deron Harmon is also a rotation safety that knows this defense very well. The area where I think the defense is going to really be better is scheme. I think their scheme is going to be a lot better. I think it's going to be a lot more diverse, creative, which in turn is going to make them a better defense. Okay? Offensively, what do we got offensively? Offensively, Derek Carr, I think, is the most underrated quarterback in the league. Josh Jacobs, I think, is a good running back. Hunter Renfro's, and I think, honestly, probably still underrated. You know, a lot of people praise him, but I think it's almost like in a joking way. Like, he's an amazing player. Amazing player. Devontae Adams is arguably the best receiver in the game. Darren Waller is one of the best tight ends in football. Josh McDaniels is one of the best offensive schemers in the game. I think that Jermaine Illuminor is going to be a solid presence at right tackle in comparison to what Leatherwood was. Cotton's fine. Simpson, fine, whatever. Colton Miller, very good player. And James, good player. So, yeah, you're concerned about the offensive line a little bit, but I think scheme will elevate them. I think the weapons getting open quickly, just like the Bengals last year, will help the offensive line as well. But the offensive line will probably lose some games as well for them. So the Raiders, I've got it 11-6. I've got them in the playoffs as a wild card, as the number 2 team in this division. But the number 1 team in the AFC West for me is the Los Angeles Chargers. And it's because I see the most upside with the Chargers from both an offense and a defense perspective. I love their offseason and I love what they've done. I see them as a legitimate Super Bowl contender. Legitimate Super Bowl contender this season. The Los Angeles Chargers I have with a 12-5 record. Their ceiling is 14-3. And their floor is 9-8. Over under 10.5, I have as a stone cold, absolute smash of an over. Okay? I think that Justin Herbert could be the MVP of football this year, along with a defense that could be one of the elite units in the NFL. Looking at the offense, you got Keenan Allen, who's an excellent route runner and can still play at a very high level. You've got Mike Williams, who's a very good wide receiver, and I think could take that step to being the number 1 in this offense over Keenan Allen. Okay. Josh Palmer, I actually really like what I saw in preseason and glimpses. And I think that guy is going to be better than people think as well. I actually think if one of these receivers were to go down, let's say Keenan Allen were to go down, man, I could see Josh Palmer having kind of a deceptively good year. Rashawn Slater's an elite left tackle. Matt Filer's a very good left guard. Corey Linsley is an awesome center. He's arguably the best in football. Zion Johnson's going to be good right away, in my opinion. Pipkins is an upgrade at right tackle, which was their weakest spot on their offense last year. Everett is probably about what Jared Cook gave you, maybe a little bit better. He's younger. Austin Eckler's excellent. Herbert's a beast. Herbert makes this offense what it is, truly. But if they can take a step forward in terms of their scheme, in terms of their consistency, this team could be awesome on offense. Defensively, this is the unit that I really like. I love their secondary with J.C. Jackson, Bryce Callahan, Asante Samuel, Nasir Adderley, Derwin James, and Michael Davis. Very deep corner group. Very good safety group. Linebackers are the weakest area, but Drew Tranquil, when he's been healthy, has played well. The defensive line with Mack and Boza is just absolutely powerful. I think their run defense, which was by far their biggest weakness last year, is going to be greatly improved, adding Kyle Van Noy, Sebastian Joseph Day, Austin Johnson, and Morgan Fox to the units on defense, to the front seven. So, the Chargers, again, 12-5, the best team in the AFC West, and the number 2 seed, or the number 3 seed, depending on where I put the Ravens there, in the AFC. Those are your AFC record predictions, guys. I hope you enjoyed this long, comprehensive breakdown, team-by-team preview of the AFC. If you enjoyed, Gronk spike the like button. Subscribe to the channel for more. We will see you tomorrow for the NFC, where I'll do the exact same thing for all 16 NFC teams. The AFC, here it is. Here you guys go. The division winners, I've got the Buffalo Bills as the number 1 seed with the bye. I've got the LA Chargers as the number 2 seed. The Ravens as the number 3, and the Colts as the number 4. Colts win the AFC South, Ravens win the AFC North. Okay? Wildcard teams. The Bengals are your number 1 wildcard team at 11-6. The Raiders are number 2 as 11-6, and the Chiefs are your final wildcard team, getting in the playoffs with Mahomes as the number 7 seed. In the hunt, I've got the Dolphins, Broncos, Patriots, Titans, and Jags in that order of record. Dolphins, Broncos, and Patriots all 9-8. Titans 8-9. Jags 7-10. Steelers I have at 7-10, 8-9. Browns I have at, or you could put the Steelers in the hunt as well. I just threw the Jags because I think they have a higher ceiling, so that's why I put the Jags there. The Browns 14 because no Deshaun Watson. The Jets, the second last, and Texans are the worst team in the AFC, in my opinion. Sorry, guys. All right. There it is, though. Hope you enjoyed this, man. Spent a lot of time going over the depth charts, creating the graphics. If you did, please let me know. Let me know your records in the comment section below. Thank you guys once again. Thank you guys for the support, and I'm excited for 2022. Excited for a great season of AFC football. Peace.